Hey guys, I'm Dan with Rep Fitness. I'm the install tech here. Today we're going to be doing the assembly video for the FT-5000. All right, so first we'll go over all the parts that should come in your crate. Have them all laid out here. First we'll go with the hardware packs. Two of these have our bolts and everything else here. We've already used some of them. I'll go over that later. We have all of our cable end pieces that come in a little bag. We have 2 carriages, 2 head plates, 2 cables, 2 D handles, 4 guide rods, 2 high-lows, and 1 logo plate. And we'll also have 2 shroud pieces. All right, next we'll go over the tools needed. 1 ratchet. 2, I use these Allen key sockets. They're just a little easier, a little faster. You'll need an Allen set, size 17, and a 19 or 18, either will work. Drill, just be careful when using a drill not to over tighten anything, but it's gonna speed up the process a little bit. Bottle of silicone lubricant, we'll go over that when we're discussing the weights and guide rods. A little rag to wipe the silicone down, and that's it. All right, so also in the crate, you're gonna have 2 main uprights, 2 cross members here, and 1 pull-up bar. We just sped up the process a little bit and already pre-installed those. Couple things to point out. These 2 are both gonna fit the same. It's kind of personal preference if you want the narrow pegs versus the wider pegs, top, bottom, however you wanna do it. Pull-up bar, pretty standard also. I leave everything just hand tightened for this step, just because when we're installing the shroud back here, which is going to be the next step, it's just a little easier to line up the bolts. All right, so before we get started, just wanted to point out one thing. The bolts that we use for each one of these steps here, seen some people do this incorrectly before, but basically it's gonna be bolt, lock washer, this flange washer here with the flanges pointing towards the head of the bolt, because eventually when we're all done, we're gonna use this black cap here and stick it right over the end. It's gonna lock into place. All right, so after we have the main assembly done here, we're gonna move on to the shrouds next. First, we're gonna do this back logo plate. So the bolts needed for this are gonna be located in this little bag here. Go ahead and cut it out. So what we're looking for here is there's 4 shorter bolts that don't have the thread lock. You can see here, this one's shorter compared to these ones with the red thread lock. So we need 4 of those and 4 washers. Grab this guy here, and it's gonna be a size 4 Allen key that we're gonna use for this. We'll come around the back of the machine. So the reason I leave these main bolts here loose or just hand tightened is just for fitting this in a little easier. Sometimes it's kind of a little struggle to line up these bolts if you tighten everything down. All right, now that we have the back logo plate up, we are gonna move on to these side shrouds here. Bolts needed are gonna be the ones in that same bag with the red thread lock. Same thing, washer on every single one. All right, so grab these shrouds here, come around to this side. Sure, there's multiple ways to do this. What I've found easier is to just start from the back, and you kind of got to pinch in these sides here to get them past the lip of the thread insert, because it'll kind of get caught there. All right, so now that we got them somewhat in there, I always kind of put 1 bolt in. That'll help you kind of get the rest of them in. You're now good to go ahead and just tighten down all the bolts that you've put in thus far, and we can go ahead and move on to the next. So now for our next step, we are going to do the high-lows. So we're going to need a carriage here, 1 of the high-lows, and 3 total bolts per side. So for the top, it's gonna be 2 of these long ones with washers, 1 of these hex heads with one bolt and two of the bigger washers. I'll go ahead and take those over there now. So first step here, you'll notice that your high-low comes with these little bolts inserted at the top and bottom. Those are just bumper stops so the carriage doesn't travel too far. So take one of those out, and then we're gonna slide our carriage on the high-low. So you're gonna wanna pull out this blue pin here, slide it on top, get it to a good spot, lock it in place, set it in top, tap her into place. Might be a little tight, but that's all right. Go ahead and grab this bolt here, one washer, and slide it in. Take the other washer, put it on, and then the nut. All right, so we'll come up here to the top. It's kind of tough to see down in the holes, so you kind of just got to stick the bolt in, move this guy around until you kind of feel it go in here. At this point, you can go ahead and tighten these. It's going to be a size 5 Allen for the top. And here at the bottom, it's going to be a size 8 Allen key and a 17 on the nut side. All right, for our next step, now that we're done with the high-lows, we can move on to the weight stacks. So what you're gonna need, 2 guide rods here and one of these hardware packs. These are gonna be the spacers at the bottom of the guide rods, metal spacers, and then rubber donuts on top of those. I'll show you what I'm talking about there. All right, so we got our guide rods just kind of set in place here, resting against the shroud. What I wanna do is take out these 8 bolts here. So these come out, these basically will just hold the guide rods in place. Be a size 5 Allen key. All right, now that we have that done, we can grab our hardware pack here with the spacers. Big spacers first. Then the small metal spacers. Now the little rubber donuts. So you'll kind of notice that that's kind of sticky, hard to slide on there. So what I like to do is just grab some silicone lubricant now and go ahead and spray down the guide rods. And that's gonna help everything just slide nice and easy. It's gonna help you putting on the weights. You're not gonna be fighting with it as much. I just use silicone lubricant. You can get it at Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever hardware store is close to you. Give it a little spray. Just kind of rub it up and down. And that's gonna allow this rubber piece to move nice and easy now, as well as the weights. We'll do the same to the other side. We can go ahead and move on to cutting open the weights. You can do this by yourself. Sometimes it's a little easier to have somebody there. But when we put these on, you're gonna want this plastic piece facing up. See the difference there? Make sure that's facing towards the top. First one's always kind of the toughest. Line them up. And now it's just kind of a process going through them. So there's 3 weights per box. You're gonna have 6 boxes on each side, so 18 plates total, plus the head plate, which will be the last plate that we put on. So sometimes when you're doing this, also you might kind of catch this plastic piece and pop it out. They are removable, so don't be alarmed if that does happen to you. Just make sure to grab it, put it back in. So we got all our plates on, and we can grab the head plate as the last one. It's not a big deal which way you face it, but there kind of is a front and back. You'll notice the back side has this little silver roll pin in there. The front just looks a little cleaner. So go ahead and throw it on that way. Slide her on. And once we have that on, we can go ahead and put these guide rods back in place using the pieces that we took out before. One thing I want to point out, there's a little, I don't know if you can see that, there's a little set screw on these that will eventually tighten down to keep this guide rod from wiggling. It's a little easier if you go ahead and tighten it now to basically where it's flush, and then put it on, because that's going to save you a bunch of time just doing little half turns with your Allen key once you get it on there. So I'll go ahead and do that now. One thing I forgot to mention with this side, in that same hardware pack, you'll have your weight pin. You can go ahead and cut that out and install it. Got it installed on this side already. Just a little key ring here. Spread that out and just hook it through. All right, now that we have both weight stacks installed, we can go ahead and move on to the cabling. Got this one unwound already. So find the back of the carriage here. That's where this bolt's gonna thread into. Get it up in here. Hand tighten it as far as you can get it. And then it'll be a size 19 or 3/4 wrench. As long as it's in a good 7 full turns, that is sufficient enough. And once we have it in, we'll go ahead, take our lock nut here, spin it to the top, and then with your wrench, you can go ahead and tighten that down. First step will come down to the bottom pulley, and you want to pay attention to these little cable guards and make sure that you're getting the cable in between the pulley and that. You don't want to be on the outside, otherwise it's gonna not move very smooth and it's gonna shred your cable. So we're gonna go down, kind of come up in here, and go back up. There's just the one cable guard down there. Grab my step stool again. We're gonna come up to the top. Again, paying attention to the cable guards. They're plastic on this one. Come over the top of this one to this next one here. There is a cable guard right on the top here that's probably kind of hard to see. Just make sure you go underneath that. And then there's a metal cable guard on the outside here. Make sure again you go in between that. And then we're gonna go down through this tube here. Bring it all the way down. All the way down to the head plate. And go down and around that. Give yourself a little slack. And we're gonna go up to the top again through this bar here. There's another cable guard on this side. Make sure you get in between that. And then this cable is gonna run all the way through the inside of this to that front pulley. Now this part is pretty tricky. You can see here there's not a lot of room to kind of see where your cable is going or feel in here. So I always just take a flathead screwdriver or something small, and you can pop this end cap off here. So be gentle with it because it's just plastic and could possibly break it. Pop that guy out, and now we can see in here. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's 2 bars that come up, or 2 pieces of metal. You got to get the cable in between those so it threads right in the center of that cable. So see how this, I got it on the far side here. It's kind of just luck of the draw. Sometimes you can kind of get back here and feel where your cable's going, but there's really not much room. So I just kind of back it out a few times, and eventually you'll get it right. All right, now that we've got it right in the middle here, back it, or put it back in just a little so it comes down right here. And then we're gonna wanna make sure that we get underneath this cable guard here. Go ahead and pull it tight. Now at this stage, I always like to just pull on it a little bit and make sure it's running smooth over all the pulleys. If you have it over one of these cable guards, you're gonna feel it at this point. So just test it first. And then I'll go ahead and give myself some slack by lifting up on the weight on the head plate. I'll put in that weight pin and I'll go ahead, come down here, and we're gonna get it in between the two pulleys on the carriage here. And we'll pull it out right here. And now we have a bunch of extra cable. That way when we put on the cable ends, we're not fighting with a short cable. All right, now we got our cable through, got the extra hanging. We're gonna go ahead and attach our cable ends. So first thing you wanna put on is going to be the ball. And you'll notice here that one hole is smaller than the other. We're gonna want that smaller hole facing the carriage. So we'll put the cable in that way. And we're gonna take this little rubber bumper, put that in. And then the metal piece here with the 3 set screws, we're gonna stick that on. You might need to back out a couple of the set screws just to get it in all the way. But you just wanna make sure that that cable goes all the way and touches the bottom here. And then what you wanna do is tighten these up. I'm just gonna hand tighten them for right now. But I always do it the middle set screw first, then the top, and then the bottom. So hand tighten those to where it's okay. It's not gonna fall off very easily. But when you do come back and tighten them, the size 4 Allen key, you're gonna wanna tighten them to where the set screw is flush with the metal part. And then once you do that, I'm not gonna tighten them for the video's sake today just because I don't wanna ruin the cable sheathing here. But then this will come down, slide over the end of this, and then with your little black piece that also comes in the bag, you're gonna wrap that around the cable. And it's gonna fill the void of the big hole here. It's basically gonna shove right up in there, and you can push it in there nice and tight to keep that ball from moving up and down the cable. And then carabiner will obviously just hook right in here for all of your attachments. And once again, this rubber piece will eventually come down and cover up these set screws completely. All right, now that we have both cables threaded, that's pretty much it. Everything's done. The last step that I would recommend is just going back to your silicone lubricant, giving these guide rods another spray. And then that's just gonna help those plates move up and down nice and easy. I've heard some people recommend white lithium grease. I personally don't recommend that. I just think that it gets a little gunky, a little sticky over time, and it's been known to also corrode plastics, I've heard. So recommend just silicone lubricant and you should be all set. One of the last steps after the cables, you're gonna wanna put the stickers on the weight stacks, just showing how much they weigh. You're gonna find that in this little hardware pack, and also all these black caps, which you're gonna come back here and just snap in over all of these bolts here. One thing to also notice is you're gonna have a couple extra bolts. The factory just sends them that way just to have extras just in case. And that's your FT-5000. I hope this video helps you guys get it built, and I hope you enjoy it.